Hello to one, hello to all. In this episode, I will talk about some of my earliest memories and experiences I went through. Although these are my own memories, I guess they would be similar to all my siblings. There will be a lot of jumping around as they are just fragments of memories that I think will be relevant to retracing our roots in a future video. I will go into more detail about some of the situations in later videos. So bear with me while I go through them, and you will see how this phrase popped up in my head during the writing of this episode. Bringing a knife to a gunfight. I don't think I even got that knife. It was more like a pair of wooden chopsticks. I am sure the viewers are wise enough to distinguish from my speech what are actual memories and what are knowledge I gained as I grew up, listening to conversations between parents and neighbors. Let me begin with this very first memory. I sat up on a bed set against the wall and was barely awake. I looked into the center of the house. Much later on, I found out that our house had no rooms, just a relatively big space surrounded by 4 walls. And the adults were frantically running around to save what they could to go down to the bomb bunkers. That's when I realized the air raid siren was what woke me up, and I was hoping I would not be forgotten as I couldn't remember if I could walk yet. One thing I can be certain of, I was definitely not old enough to get out of bed by myself. Needless to say, the morning after the night before, our neighborhood became a vast rubble. On the day I was born, as usual, my mother set out to work early in the morning on her bicycle. Halfway into the journey, she felt something was not right. She had a lot of practice by then, as I was the 5th child she had. So her friend advised her to go to the hospital instead, which luckily for me she agreed to. I was born within an hour of getting to the hospital. My parents were not educated at all, so my siblings and I did not get much teaching in all things from our parents. In fact, my mother's side of the family was so poor. She was sold to a rich family to do their house chores when she was just 8 years old. But I will save that talk for another episode. One morning I woke up and barely had the energy to get out of bed, and the house was empty of people. We were so poor, I don't think I ever had a full stomach before bedtime each evening. I sat at the table in the center of the house with my head down over my arms. I then noticed a piece of brown substance, and I thought it was a broken piece of biscuit. I quickly put it in my mouth and started chewing. After just a couple of chews, I had to spit it out very quickly because it was a piece of soap rather than foodstuff. Although we barely had enough food for the whole family on a daily basis, for some reason we had another place of residence in the hills. I did not understand the need for this until much later on. When the air raids get too frequent and intense, we need somewhere to disappear until the bombing campaign subsided. When I was old enough to attend school, my parents had to decide which one of my elder siblings had to drop out, as there wasn't enough money in the family to pay for all the kids' schooling at the same time. Every day after 3 in the afternoon, one of my elder siblings would have to take a bucket and walk over a mile to queue up for fresh water at one of the nearest taps to the house. As we don't have any water system inside the house, this bucket of water will be used for cleaning and cooking vegetables and rice. We loved New Year's celebrations as it was the only time we got to have meat and a set of new clothes. The rest of the year we just get a boiled bunch of vegetables and rice. Even the water from boiling the vegetables was not wasted as we added a few drops of lemon and a pinch of salt to turn it into soup. As we only get a set of clothes once a year, most of the time when holes appear, they just get patched over if they get too big. From patchwork, everyone can tell who the poor kids were in school. Most days going to school will be on an empty stomach, unless Mum has spare change somehow. The house we lived in was just a rectangular room with grandparents in one corner, 2 uncles in another corner, and then my parents with their kids at the other end of the room. There was a large table and chairs in the center of the room for family gatherings, I guess. I can remember when our grandmother died, the body was laid in a coffin in the center of the room for 7 days before it was taken to the cemetery. Can you imagine what it was like? We had to practically spend 7 days and nights doing normal chores with a dead body in the heart of our home. Our uncles had a favorite fruit they normally dish out to get respect from us. Yes, this was the old world order. Elders expect respect from their younger generation automatically. And if they don't get it, the fruit is happily dished out. The name of this fruit, loosely translated from Chinese, is 5-knuckle fruit. It was practically their fist to your head until you submit. Once we were living in the hills, I had no idea how I have upset my grandfather, and I got thrown into a massive hole in the ground. These holes were man-made to collect rainwater for normal daily usage. They were about 6 feet deep and at least as wide in circumference. My mother was not allowed to get me out until her father said so. By the time I was let out and got into the house, it was almost midnight. To this day, I still can't stand touching worms, snails and slugs. About roughly 4 years after the Americans were kicked out of South Vietnam, my whole family was also kicked out and had to move to China. I learned later on that Vietnam and China had a quick spat at each other, and Chinese immigrants had to go back to China, where both my parents were from. If anyone is interested in finding out more, the name of the war is Sino-Vietnamese War. I was too young to understand the situation, but just knew that for no reason whatsoever we had to stop everything and just move to another country. The move to China was the first and easy start for me, as we only had to take a train ride to the border between Vietnam and China, and then walk across. My next journey to the west will be far more dangerous and painful, which I will describe in an upcoming video. Those are just some of my earliest memories and early life experiences. I am sure you can agree that it was not really a great start to life for anyone, and not just me, if they were caught under the same circumstances. I'm not complaining, I just wanted to tell it as it was for me, so our descendants can compare and contrast their own lives. Something for them to think about next time when they think their world has just ended, when they have no internet access. Also, it is not a unique situation in terms of wars and conflicts, because as I'm writing this, in May 2025, there are at least 2 wars that are constantly being reported on our TV screens. For me, what was unique, however, was my mother never heard of maternity leave, and I could have popped out in the middle of the street somewhere, and how poor we were. There is a lot more trouble for me to come, as the above were just the tip of an iceberg of my life struggles. If you ask me, would I change anything in my past if I could? I would definitely say no, as I have come to really appreciate all the experiences that my life circumstances have given me. Most of all, it has taught me to see life from a totally different point of view. To all my friends, colleagues, and even some family members, I appreciate every single grain of rice that I have the great fortune to have.